Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Science, Technology and Environment and Puducherry Climate Change Cell, I warmly welcome you all to this webinar organized as a part of the World Environment Day celebrations this year, 2026. This year's theme, Inspired by Nature for Climate for Our Future, reminds us that nature is not only something that we must protect, but also we must choose nature as a powerful support that we have in solving today's environmental and climatic change challenges. And to propagate this idea among all stakeholders, we have organized this webinar today on the very topic, very theme of this year's World Environment Day, nature inspired solution for climate resilience. So for this webinar, we are honored to have Dr. Deepak Samuel, scientist National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, Chennai, as the guest speaker and to deliver the talk for today. And to begin with, I request Mr. K. Kalmeham, Environmental Engineer, Department of Science, Technology, Environment, Government of Puducherry, to share his thoughts as the opening remarks for this webinar. Sir, please.
Very good evening to all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar organized by the Department of Science, Technology and Environment and the Puducherry Climate Change Cell as part of the celebration of the World Environment Day 2026 pre-campaign events. This year's theme of World Environment Day is inspired by nature for climate for our future, which reminds us that nature is not only affected by climate change but also offers powerful solutions to address it. With rising temperatures, intense rainfall, floods, coastal erosion, droughts, biodiversity loss, and livelihood impacts, climate resilience has become an immediate necessity, especially for coastal regions like Puducherry. Nature-inspired solutions such as mangroves, wetlands, urban green spaces, coastal vegetation, water bodies, and biodiversity-rich landscape provide sustainable and cost-effective way to regulate climate, reduce disaster risks, store carbon, recharge groundwater, and improve quality of life. Unlike conventional gray infrastructure, nature-based solutions offer multiple benefits. Restored wetlands can reduce flooding, improve water quality, support biodiversity, and sequester carbon, while urban tree cover can reduce heat stress and improve air quality. For Puducherry, such solutions are highly relevant. Our coastline, water bodies, agricultural landscapes, and urban areas are all require climate-sensitive planning. Integrating nature into developmental planning can help us build a more resilient and sustainable union territory. The government of Puducherry, through various climate initiatives, has been working towards strengthening climate action, including climate risk assessment in developmental planning, greenhouse gas inventory preparation, low carbon strategies, awareness programs, and interdepartmental coordination. However, climate resilience cannot be achieved by government action alone. It requires the participation of scientists, planners, institutions, local bodies, students, communities, and the citizens. Today's webinar is an important step in that direction. Today we have with us Dr. Deepak Samuel, scientist NCSM Chennai, who has been associated with the Department of Science, Technology and Environment and the Government of Puducherry in various coastal management initiatives. I hope he'll provide, I'm sure that he'll provide valuable insights into how nature-inspired approaches can be applied for climate resilience, especially in coastal and urban ecosystems. During this World Environment Day, let us reaffirm our commitment to protect nature, restore ecosystems, reduce emissions, and build climate resilient communities. The future we seek must be one where development and environment move together. Let us be inspired by nature, act for climate, and work together for our future. Thank you, one and all, and best wishes for a meaningful and productive webinar.
Thank you, sir, for your opening remarks. So now we'll get into the technical lecture of the webinar. And before that, let me introduce our guest speaker for the participants. Our speaker today, Dr. Deepak Samuel, is scientist E and project lead in charge, conservation of coastal and marine resources division in the National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, MOCC, Government of India, Chennai. Dr. Samuel is a marine biologist with a PhD in marine biology and has over 20 years of experience in coastal and marine biodiversity, ecosystem conservation, marine species documentation, and coastal resource management. He has served in key academic research and in international project roles, including UNDP GEF, Gulf of Mannar Project, and Madras Christian College. He has contributed significantly to national level coastal and marine initiatives, including ecologically sensitive areas, critically vulnerable coastal areas, integrated coastal zone management plans, and the National Coastal and Marine Spatial Plan. He is also the principal investigator of Combine, a validated database of more than 11,000 Indian coastal and marine species. Dr. Samuel has published 104 peer reviewed research papers, including books, manuals, policy briefs, management plans, and identification guides. His contribution includes the discovery of two species new to science and 70 new marine species in Indian waters. Sir, we warmly welcome you to deliver this lecture for today. Thank you, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and must thank Mr. Kala Megam, who's a good friend of mine, and thank you for roping me into this activity that you have for the day. I will just share my screen, and please let me know whether it's visible. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Can anybody confirm, please?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Great. Okay. Fine. So actually, when Kalamegam sir asked me, like, to speak, I was just asking, like, what is the theme for the year? Because this is also the theme that we're celebrating for the World Environment Day this year. Nature inspired solution. Actually, nature has been always very close to my heart. I started loving nature very small because my father used to have a good horticulture, kind of a huge facility in our house, and then we used to go and talk to. He'll say always go and talk to the plants. He'll give a book to us, identification for me and my brother, and we used to go. So that was the time we started to learn about plants, learn about animals, and there was a strong bonding for me. So I was very happy that this year's theme also is centered on nature-inspired solutions. Basically, you see that there are two different terminologies that use what we call as nomenclatures. One is called ecosystem-based approach, and another one nature-based solution. Both are same. It's only in the UN language that certain countries adopted ecosystem-based approach, like what India does, and some of them have taken nature-based solution as the theme or a kind of nomenclature for their activities related to nature conservation and so on. So today's topic will be a nature-inspired solution. It doesn't, it not it requires more than 1 hour for me to completely say what nature-based solutions are, and to give examples and what work India has done. But I will try to cover as much as possible in a nutshell, because 45 minutes of time I'm targeting, and I will just go through it one by one. So as an introduction, why is this nature-based solution being talked about? Almost everywhere now in the world. And this particular decade, 20 to 2030, is called as also the decade of ecosystem restoration by the UN systems. So we are trying to now restore ecosystems which are being degraded and damaged, and we are trying our best to make sure that the original look of the system, the original function of the ecosystem is brought back. Unfortunately, when the system is lost, an ecosystem is lost. For example, mangrove, certain areas gone, a coral reef, certain patches gone, salt marsh has gone, trees are gone. We can try to replace them, but I can challenge you that it will not be the same condition as it was before. So when we say restoration, we try to only bring back or mimic what was existing. Never we can bring back to the original condition. So we are in a situation where our entire future seems grim in terms of climate change angle, and it's also because of the high risk that we are facing in terms of climate change. You see that we were to have now solutions which are resilience. And Kamamaga sir started to give a brief in introduce. He said you use the word resilient and resilience, and these are this is a term, a word that is used to tell on something that is capable of withstanding any kind of environmental change as we talk related to climate change. And we're talking about resilient solutions, solutions which can remain for a longer time, solutions which help in making sure that we are able to withstand the challenges existing, adapt to the changes happening, and whatever is remaining to be protected, try to restore as much as possible and to try and bring to a strong future. So that is the whole idea about of having a need for any kind of resilient solutions as we discussed today. And as we are aware, climate change is increasing and its risks also increasing parallelly. We see that we are expecting about approximately 1.2 degrees temperature change that's happening from the pre-industrial levels when the manufacturing facilities, the big polluting industries have come into play. And now events that we see, cyclones or storm surges, we see that it has become very frequent. And the case of East Coast, when there are two cyclones or three cyclones per year, we see around 4 or 5 coming up now, and it's increasing. West Coast used to witness cyclone once in a decade, but now we have lots of cyclones and storm surges coming up on the West Coast also. We're also having a threatening impact from the rising seas, and that is directly affecting the communities which are at the fringe of the coasts, especially on the beaches, and we have seen it happening, and we are witnessing the example of erosion that's taking place because of climate. There is also erosion that occurs because of anthropogenic interventions like the jetties that are being built, the ports that are being built, and the breakwaters, the dikes are being built. There is some impact always, but I'm talking about natural impact. Naturally, when the SLR, the sea level rise increases, we see that we are also having some kind of impact on the coast. The erosion is seen very clearly. And also, there are some areas that are considered vulnerable, what we call heat mapping or hot zones or heat zones, where you see that there can be some kind of impact. And there are multiple methodologies, multiple ways of approach by this has been done. So the threats are from rising temperatures, more extreme storms and heavy rains, the floods that is being expected now. Chennai flood is a classic example. Droughts that is seen, places where water is existing now water has come down, places where water is minimal, there is no water, and places when there is no water at all, you see that there's a complete damage to the entire water column and there's absolutely zero water available. And we've also seen frequent wildfires that are coming up. Australia is one example, US we have seen wildfires coming up, South America some wildfires have come up. So we do have wildfires because rise in temperature. Higher temperature automatically grabs on into the dried twigs and leaves and start burning, and that just spreads into a forest fire. And all this has a direct impact on health, not just health on the humans, but also on the ecosystem where plants and animals thrive. Certain species are now becoming completely endemic. Some species are becoming completely extinct. And in the last 1 decade, we have seen many species that have been red listed and have been brought from endangered category into critically endangered or extinct in the wild. And all these also impact our economies. It is directly playing a very important role in economies. So as the planet is warming up, as the impacts are accelerating, communities are always in the risk. That's why we call it as a vulnerability in terms of any climatic movement. So, what are these nature-inspired solutions? Why are we talking so much about that? Is it just nature, going to nature and looking at it and getting inspired, or adopting, adapting to what these nature provides? And that we'll be looking into one by one. And what we will look at is that the definition first. Now, IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Natural Resources, nature, talks about the nature-inspired approach as actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively while simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefit. You see that the entire gamut of the definition covers from plants, animals, humans, altogether biologically playing a very important role to face any kind of abiotic characteristics that is affecting in terms of climate change. So the when we say nature inspired, it means that we are taking cues, ideas from the nature. Man has been taking a lot of ideas from nature. For example, the if I quote a good example, it's sort of the smoke screen that has been developed looking at the inking of octopus and cuttlefish as a defense mechanism. They just ink and make the entire area black and they disappear. That's a classic example from where people, the warfare, modern warfare, identified and discovered the smoke screens, which is used for both in fighting in the war and also for to kind of disperse a mob. So this is the definition per se on nature-based, nature-inspired, and nature-based solutions. Now, what is the difference between that when we talk about a conventional engineering and when we talk about nature-inspired solutions? See, we try to protect, for example, Pondicherry coast, we have put a lot of boulders to make sure that erosion does not happen. Even the Mahabalipuram, the seventh Pakora temple, you see, it has been protected by these big boulders. But these are all these are probably we cannot call it direct engineering, but it's an engineering feature because it has been designed such a way, it is put in such an air. People think that we drop them, then it will not have impact. Unfortunately, you see that there is a big impact that is there on the coast, on the either on the northern side or the southern side. And also, we see that these conventional engineering is very rigid and it's maintenance heavy. Once you drop a build a structure and drop something, it's very difficult to replace it or change direction or modify it. That's a difficulty we have. And interestingly, it often reduces biodiversity. It reduces, so definitely the point is very clear. It does not eliminate biodiversity, it reduces biodiversity. There might be new biodiversity organisms because once you have a rocky shore, in a sandy shore there are burrowing forms, there are crabs, there are polychaete worms, there are mole crabs, there are certain fish that bury at the close, there are shells that are there. But when you create an artificial rocky shore, what happens is that it is replaced by mollusks that feed on rocky shore, seagrasses growing on them, anemones like that. So entire ecological change happens. And also, these engineering or hard structures, which is conventional in nature, are designed for a single function, which means that I keep it here so that erosion does not happen. I keep it here so that the mouth is open. I keep it here so that the dams are completely checked. Whereas that is not the actual idea. It has to have a multi-prong or multi-prong kind of an approach. And it is also short-term in terms of efficiency. So if we see recently, Supreme Court in the last 2 years, as mentioned, about 2 years back, it told that no more hard engineering, go for soft engineering or hybrid engineering, where technology, green measures can be used. At the same time, we can also use little bit of hard engineering, but focusing more on the soft engineering. So as I told you, seawalls, concrete drains, dam, these are all examples of hard engineering. Whereas when you come back to natural solution, you see that you use all the natural processes existing. Okay, and natural process, when I say there are vegetation, there are trees that have been there, there are waterways that can be diverted and channeled. And these, when we do these things and greenery is happening and green coastal infrastructure is practiced, we see that it is more sustaining because it increases biodiversity and so on. And it increases the functional benefits. In not just biodiversity, it does a lot of other things. And some great examples of nature inspired solutions are these mangroves and wetlands and green roofs and agroforestry, which we'll be studying about, we'll be reading about a little later. So why nature matters for climate resilience? Number one, it provides a terrific ecosystem services and it all helps in adaptation and mitigation benefits. Now, when we say ecosystem services, basically the TEEP system is followed, where provisioning, regulatory, cultural support is four angles are given, and all that are taken into consideration. And there are groups, research groups that work from a social angle, from an environmental angle, from a statistical angle to bring out a value for every system. If you say, for example, terrestrial forests, what are the provisioning services? There are a lot of products that develop from there, like timber, like fuel, medicine, and so on. If you take the marine, for example, there you're getting fish, we're getting shellfish, we're getting sand, we're getting salt, and so on. Not just we're getting drugs. So these are provisioning services. And I think it's classified into provisioning, regulatory, cultural, and supporting services. All these are being calculated. And for a particular area, this cannot be done holistically for the country. If you take a particular area, mangroves of Pichavaram, then we can focus only in particular because the value of the ecosystem services provided at Pichavaram will be totally different from than one that is being presented in maybe Muthupet or maybe Sundarbans. It's totally different. So basically, when we do ecosystems, it is easy to give a generic value for particular per acre or per square kilometer. But then it is important that we site specifically pick up the area, look at the ecosystem services they provide. So ecosystem service is something that is very important that is being provided when we take up nature-based solutions or nature-inspired solutions. And also it helps in a lot of adaptation and mitigation measures. Adaptation, for example, naturally they play the protection. They reduce flooding by absorbing excess water and storing excess water. They support food and water security. They regulate local climate. If you can definitely agree with me, when you go into a forest area, even the coast, you see that there will be a difference of 1 degree. And if I know, I studied in Madras Christian College, so when we and it's a 365 acres campus, and it's got a deciduous shrub jungle. It's got arid shrub jungle, and you see that when you go to MCC, when you get on Tambaram railway station, when the temperature is 34 degrees, when you go on to the campus of MCC, you see that it will be at least 3 degrees drop. The temperature will be 31 degrees. That's mainly because of the green canopy and the regulating adaptation services that are being provided by these beautiful vegetation. So mangroves, wetlands, corals, forests, seagrass, green roofs, all these provide lot of greening. And how do they help in mitigation? They help in absorbing, storing carbon. They improve the air quality. As you know, that plants take in carbon dioxide and give us oxygen. They give us good air quality, and they restore degraded landscape. Sometimes, when man does not intervene itself, we see that if a degraded area is there, automatically nature tries to regenerate the area by itself. Mangroves go like that. We see that mangroves 50 years back and today have been slowly migrating towards the land. One reason because of the sea level rise. Second thing is because they have a natural colonization process which we call it ecological succession. Not all mangroves come; they'll be species specific. And salt marsh will start coming first, and then you can see the mangroves coming out. And also we see that emissions are reduced because of these trees and vegetation that is seen in the coast, in the forest, in terrestrial mountain, wherever you go. And also they support a low carbon, providing resilient futures. You see, resilient has become a very important buzzword, a keyword that we use in all our discussions and deliberations in the not just now but in the coming ages also. So what are these global climate change? All of us are aware what the global climate changes are. I'm just going to just touch upon it. Climate change is a serious thing, as I told you, forest fires and drought and things like that happening everywhere. But this is coupled also with the kind of industrial revolution development that we had. Population is going big, lots and lots of industries. The demand and requirement for fossil fuels has become very high. Easy fuel, fossil fuels, burnt, high kind of pollution. It's affecting health of ecosystems and human life. We are also in an era where there's technological risks, where we see that there are threats for us, digital arrests and so on going on. That's on one side. Poverty inequality, because the population increasing, all cannot be supported to the job. All want the same kind of job. It's not possible, and we have an issue there. There is issue of food security. Not all of us get food. There are people still on the road, don't have a roof to rest on, don't have 1 square meal food to eat, and we also see that severe biodiversity loss as development happens, as there is this anthropogenic impacts come and we see that there is the area of forest cover, the area of green vegetation is coming down, and we see that there's severe biodiversity loss. There's human-animal conflicts, animals coming from their wildlife habitat into the villages or town areas. That's mainly because it was once their area. We have encroached into it, and then we see there is a lot of human-animal conflict that's happening. Now, coming to types of nature-based solution, we saw about what nature inspired solutions are, what why it is required, and why in an era where we are talking about climate change impacts, these are very very important. So there are three broad. This is not restricted to these three, but these are three very important three broad nature based solutions that we see. One is the ecosystem restoration. I spoke about, as I told you, this era, this decade is called as uh, uh, the, the the decade of ecosystem restoration by UN. And number two is green coastal infrastructure. Green infrastructure can be also implemented on the coastal sites. That their HCSM is now implementing a project under National Coastal Mission on Green Coastal Infrastructure and sustainable land and water management. These are the three broad themes that are based on nature-based solution. And you see in that, number one is that a restorative nature-based solution. As I told you, we can never bring back to the original condition of whatever systems have been destroyed. And it's the systems, it's the ecosystems that have been destroyed. It's near to impossible to get them back. Maybe 70% is great achievement, but definitely not beyond that. It will not grow big. 70% is very big achievement, not beyond that. So we are trying to restore. rehabilitate or manage ecosystems so that the health and their structure is functions are completely managed. And this has been successful in forest landscape restoration, wetland restoration, and coral reef restoration. This is happening all over the world. India is also doing a lot of work on these. Many wetlands have been restored. As you know, wetland we have wetlands guidelines telling us what to do, what not to. Brief documents being prepared. All wetlands in every state has to be mapped and ground truth and ground verified. That's a Supreme Court order. And forest landscape restoration for India, good to know that the forest lands come under the forest department. When you go to northeast, for example, Nagaland, the forest is still with the people. Very few areas will have available with the forest department. So we are taking to restore the land wherever degradation is there. We try to do gap plantation. We do other restoration factors and coral restoration. Now it is very well done in scientifically proven that India is in par with world in terms of coral reef restoration technologies. It has happened in Gujarat, it happened in Maharashtra, in Malwan, in Gujarat, in Gulf of Kutch, in Jamnagar, we've seen it, in Gulf of Mannar, Parkway, we've seen it active in Lakshadweep and Andaman. So wherever the corals are, we've seen that restoration has been formed. That is one way of looking into how restorative nature-based solution are taking place. Number two is that issue-specific nature-based solution. Well, for example, there will be a particular X area that is having a problem. For example, we have done one case study in West Bengal where there is an island called Sagar Island, which is the in the South Parganas area, and this island is a highly impacted area. Millions and millions of people come to the island and go back. But this is having a severe erosion on the southern side near the Kapil Muni ashram. So in 2019, when NCC did the work, we found out what is the reason. Then we found out the water coming low from Ganga, from Hooghly. That is one reason. And the impact of sea level rise, structures built in Sundarbans for the burn structures to make sure that erosion doesn't happen has directly impacted. So these islands are supposed to be now it's like climate refugee kind of island. That's the kind of condition is there. So then for that we suggested a breakwater, a living shoreline that is away on the half kilometer into the 1 kilometer into the ocean, and then minimizing the entire flow coming inside. So what I'm trying to tell is that site specifically we can look into what are the requirements and we can produce nature-based solutions for that. And one is restoration nature-based solution. One is site-specific nature-based solution depending upon the issue. What is there? It can be agroforestry. If it's coast, it can be mangrove. It can be salt marsh. It can be corals. It can be seagrass. And urban green, where like I show some slides how greening can happen. And the third type is innovative nature-based solutions, where we bring in technology. There's a combination of technology, biomimicry. I'll be showing some examples. Floating wetlands. Floating wetlands is even if you see in Bangladesh, even now the vegetables are cultivated on floating because Bangladesh has a lot of water coming from Ganges, and we see that that is being used as a vital area for cultivation of floating garden, floating vegetable gardens, and so on. And plus, it's also giving us a way for blue carbon initiatives. So these are some of the three important. There are many, but these are three important nature-based solution approach that we have in terms of implementing these. And what are the key ecosystems? We already saw the ecosystems, but I'm just going to revise again, going back, see what are the key ecosystems and what support they provide and resilience. So you see that forest is major. It helps in carbon storage, habitat for wildlife, soil water production, wetlands. It is a major source, and India has got 2 million wetlands mapped as per the wetland list of SAC, so Space Application Center. And these are very important in terms of water purification, biodiversity, flood mitigation. If you have a look at a wetland, water is not the only water is life. When you see the water, it is really good to see. But when you see the birds in the water, the fish in the water, that adds a lot of volume and that value, and that's why you see the wetlands are very, very important, producing lot of services. Then we have oceans and coral reefs. Thank God the oceans are there because they are more than 25% of the greenhouse gases are being absorbed by the ocean by phytoplankton and seagrass and and coastal vegetation like mangroves and so on. Then grasslands. Now you know that India has was introduced totally around 30 individuals of cheetahs from three different countries, and now the young ones are being born. And now in the Kuno, we see that there are 50 plus cheetahs available, and mainly because there was grasslands available. Because the grasslands were there, which is in the cheetahs, it is a successful program. And you see that, I mean, conservation have different. It's an African cheetah that brought, and the Asian cheetah is not there. But still, we see that the animals survive. And recently, I read a news that because of introduction of cheetah, there is an increase of doles and Indian wolves, which is not seen for a long time. There are owls that have been owlets that have been coming in place. So you see that something which missed in system when it's reintroduced, you see that the entire system is trying to revive back, and that is how nature takes care of itself. And grasslands are classical examples for that. They are just not just meadows for for our cattle. People live in the periphery of this protected areas and national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. It is not for the cattle also to graze and come. There's livelihood coming out of it. They increase soil fertility. They produce. They impact water infiltration. They give good quality water, and lots and lots of bees and wasps and insects do a lot of pollination, what we call entomophily. Mangroves, all of us know the tsunami was the best example how mangroves protected people in the coast. Wherever mangroves were there, people lives were lost are very, very minimal. And they also stabilize the coast, and they are very important nurseries for both marine shell and finfish. Rivers and lakes, again, these are the most important sources of fresh water. In fact, the amount of fresh water have in the world is hardly less than 3%, whereas remaining is all seawater. So whatever is there, we should make sure that it is conserved properly and it is being utilized sustainably, and so that the future is not affected very much. So these are the some ecosystem, not all, just some ecosystem that play a very important role in nature well-being. As I told you, mangroves play a very important role in coastal protection. You see, there's an artificial, kind of a structure that is put, kind of a tetrapod or a wall that is built, and a mangrove is there. But you see that wherever mangroves have been, they act as natural barrier against strong waves, storm surges, and even there are videos now available in YouTube, in many of the social media, Instagram and so on. You see that how even when tsunamis come, even when height waves come, how these mangroves have been a solid wall protecting these things. And China, I think, recently has built a very big project, had a very big project where from the high tide line to 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer in landward side, they have done serious zonage and vegetation just as natural barriers, and millions of trees and plants have been planted. And they also play very mangroves play a very important role in to minimize the flooding and damage, they minimize soil erosion and land loss, they increase impact of they decrease the impact of storms and rising seas when they are present along the coast. That's a very important role played as coastal protection, which is a nature inspired naturally methodology which is now being followed by people and plantation taking place. Under Mission Nishti, the government of India has asked all the states and territories to go for identify areas where mangrove plantation can happen. And these mangrove plantations have been done in areas. Gujarat is having the maximum. But what we strongly recommend is that even when you want to do mangrove plantation, do not do mangrove plantation in mud flats and do not do mangrove plantation in any other areas. Just to especially salt marsh areas. Identify where there are degraded mangroves. Identify areas which are very close to these mangrove plots, which degradation is seen. There you can do gap plantation and you can do. And there are different methods of mangrove plantation which are available online, and there are a lot of expert agencies. MS Swaminathan Foundation is one good example where lot of good mangrove restoration work has happened in the coastal wetlands. Wetlands also play a very important role in flood management. How do they play? Because they absorb excess rainfall. And imagine the floods which Chennai happened, if all the wetlands that are interconnected as a network, if the drains, if the systems did not get choked, if the roads were not built across them, if reclamation of land from water bodies to skyscraper buildings did not happen, the water would have flowed well. But because of pollution, because of all these networks being disaggregated or being completely fragmented, we see that the flooding happened. So it absorbs excess rainfall. It reduces flood peaks. It supports a huge biodiversity. As I told that a wetland identified with the birds and the vegetation around it. If it's just a normal water body, there's nothing much to. It's good to see, but then with the addition of birds, fishes, insects, and so on, you see that it becomes a very aesthetically beautiful place for man to watch and enjoy. It improves water quality. It builds climate resilience, how it adapts to climate change by managing all these factors, floods, droughts, and so on. And also, it protects homes and infrastructure. So they play a very important role in flood management. Besides forests and water, they have a very important role in watershed protection. So, as you're aware, forests capture carbon, and we call this green carbon because from the land, and they store the carbon, and minimize the greenhouse gases. Carbon is stored in two forms: above soil, below soil, ground soil, what we call it. It preserves that, and as the carbon is available, you also see that these healthy soils help in building stronger landscape. There is no erosion. The roots are strong, the trees are strong. But if the soil is loose, if the carbon is lost, if the soil's fertility is lost, if it is completely disaggregated, you see that automatically erosion happens. And because of erosion, you see all the trees uprooting happens. And they also regulate water, as I told you. All of this regulate water importantly. And there's soil conservation, there's rainfall regulation, because you know that from the vegetation, the water, when transfer evaporation happens, the water vapor goes on top, the convection happens, and then the rain comes down. So this entire water cycle is managed by this forest, and that's why it is very important in terms of watershed protection. And what is very silent and a natural barrier is the coral reefs. They're amazing, and because of coral reefs, these islands are protected. And its scientific study says nearly 97% of wave energy produced by reefs. If you go on to Lakshadweep, if you go on to Gulf of Mannar, if you go on to Andaman Nicobar Islands, you see that they are all kind of there are different kinds of reefs. There are fringing reefs, there are atolls, and so on. So around the island, you can see there will be lagoon area. The lagoon area is very calm, very clean aquamarine, blue green kind of water, transparent. You can toss a coin down. You can go up to kind of 20-25 feet down. You can see the coin going down. Such clear waters, and you see that the coral reefs around the fringes outside the lagoon area are the one protecting the wave action. They completely minimize the wave dynamics. And without coral reefs, you see that the stronger waves can come, and again the erosion and all the properties and livelihood will be lost. And there's a higher risk of flooding when there is a storm surge, when there is a tsunami that's happening. Then automatically see the water comes inside. Whereas the reefs are there, it acts as a primary wall, mangrove secondary wall. You can see that completely they kind of minimize the force of the waters and avoid maximum damage that is happening on the coast. They also, if the corals are not there, then the chance of increased erosion and land loss is very high. And they also have greater impact on storms and sea level rise. Because they are there, they protect. Whereas you see that corals are very beautiful. They are also, just like I told you, the mangroves are called as the nurseries of fin and shellfish and important fisheries. You see the same things apply to coral reefs also. And coral reefs, somebody said like the coral reefs are called as the rainforest underwater. So it's amazing. It's just exactly like what the person had told. It is like rainforest underwater, supporting a lot of life, not just life, supports tourism. And just like the terrestrial carbon is stored, you see that coastal carbon is stored underwater also. Seagrass and corals do play a very important role in carbon storing. So that's important. So we saw forests, we saw mangroves, an example. We see coral reefs. So one on land, one on the transition between land and water, and one inside water. These three are major systems which are acting as natural barriers, and they are very much used. What about urban areas? So we talk about areas, they're protected areas. These are areas where these ecosystem only exist. But we don't find the ecosystem everywhere, right? In an urban setup, Chennai, for example, what can be done? There can be urban forests, and this is being now proved that it's possible. China is one example where they're going with skyscrapers filled with green vegetation. We call the urban forest. Miyawaki is one good example. And there are places in Chennai, there are certain parks that have been renovated. The Adyar Punga is one example. Tulkapian Park is one example where the forests are retained, systems are retained, and it gives an aesthetic recreational place for people to go. It plays a very important role in minimizing the entire impacts that are caused because of climate change. At the same time, it also provides an opportunity for us to go and enjoy ourselves with family, and urban forests play a very important role there. Number two, green roofs. Now we see that many buildings in Ananaga, in Nongamagam, there is a building. I just forgot the name. It's near the income tax department. You see that the entire building has got complete green. It might be not as big as this that you see in the screen, but then they have taken some initiative. And recently, many of the apartments, big skyscraper apartments, on the topmost floor, you see that they are developing forests, mini forests, kind of Miyawaki, but not Miyawaki. And there are other green roofing that are happening. So if you have a house, if you have kind of a balcony, if you have a place where you can make vegetation grow, then there are vegetation which can be grown, which will reduce definitely temperature of your house. And this is now being the talk. Any architectural firm, any civil engineer is now focusing on this kind of an sustainable, source of an eco-friendly buildings which can help in the long term by minimizing temperature at least by 1 degree from the outside heat spot that is saved. There are something called the rain gardens. This is very common. Sri Lanka, it's been, I've seen many places in Sri Lanka, especially in Kandy. There will, along the roadside, you can see there will be water bodies which are built with a lot of good vegetation, and these are excellent in terms of collecting rainwater. It might not be there for the entire year, but they do have water, and you can see natural vegetation coming up at following. That's called rain gardens, and we also have urban wetlands. This is completely engineered, got a lot of aesthetics, but it also can retain water. When you have water, definitely know that when you have tree, definitely know that there will be a reduce in temperature, and that help in long way to take it. So these are some of the urban nature-based solution which is possible. And now government buildings are also going ahead with this nature-based solution. All new buildings coming up, they are looking into this urban forest, or green roofs, or rain gardens, urban wetlands, whatever concept. These just names. Only thing is adding a green tank, put some vegetation, put some water. You see that there's a lot of change in the environment, not just physically let's see outside, but also internally. When we internally, spiritually, everything you see there's a complete change when you have these greenscapes present everywhere. Not just that, even in agriculture and we there is an area where climate resilient cropping is formed. We call agroforestry. The silviculture is there. We look up for vegetation which can sustain, which can compete, it can be resilient against the climate. High temperature areas, it can still grow. And if you go to Gujarat, for example, if you read the mangoes, some of the best mangoes in the world today, the US market, Singapore market has gone from Gujarat. And there are different names. I don't remember the names, but costly mango. And these mangoes are grown Goas, and the best of the pomegranates come from Gujarat. All these are grown in completely arid areas, and by doing drip irrigation. So that is how they develop. They are not allowing water loss. Water sufficient drop by drop they are giving, and it has been followed in Tamil Nadu also. But what I'm trying to say in Gujarat, in large scale they are doing it. Again, sustainable farming is number two, and soil health restoration. These are all very important because as temperature increases, there is chance of every cultivation that you put to have a negative impact. It might not give a yield as expected. There are also a water scarcity. The crop might grow, but sufficient water for the crop will not be there, so that it results in a very poor harvest. There are new pests and diseases, zoonotics we call it. It comes from vegetation, from plants, from animals, from outside, from inside, whatever it is, and these are increasing. And you see that based on the type of heat temperature available, you see that's happening, and soil degradation are because we try to put to avoid this pest, we put chemicals like urea for growth. Of course, we put other pesticides, and that has got very important impact on the soil, and we see there's a problem. And we have a lot of livestock, so the methane emissions are very high, greenhouse emissions are very high. We have diverse cropping systems, and so on. So many things are there, and we see that now agriculture is also being focused such a way that the risks, the losses, the all kinds of impact that are there that are being identified now. And now we're talking about climate risk in agriculture. We have come to a point where we are now trying to have gene manipulation and see whether we can develop rice varieties and other kind of crops that can be grown in coastal areas where salinity increases happen and where salinity is very high. And this is targeting abandoned agriculture farms, abandoned salt farms, where they want to kind of take care of these coastal agriculture activities. And there's something called as a blue green infrastructure. And what are these blue green infrastructures? You see that it is a combination of water, which is blue, green is basically on the plant. So we are putting both these together. Now this is a classic example of how there are sectors. For example, water sector is one. Water for kind of the it can be for an apartment, it can be for the city, it can be drinking water, it can be recycled water, which can be used for various purposes. This can go to a completely constructed wetland or anything like that. Housing needs for housing, transport. So these are the major sectors. And example here is that how these three sectors can be called as a blue green sector when certain things are followed. What happens is that when we have shading and evaporative cooling practices, we have recreation culture, when you have storm management facilities, use of recycled rainwater, cleaner air, water quality, carbon storage, all this can directly fit into the sectors, and it can help. These are services provided by sectors when we follow the use or adapt or adopt the nature inspired systems. Services they provide, and see what are the savings. There is surface runoff reduction because the water is stored somewhere. There's wastewater reduction, so because the wastewater is again recycled, use. There is energy intensity reduction, and there's also water abstraction reduction. So these are some of the outputs that you see when you implement a blue green infrastructure, resulting in good ecosystem services, resulting in good cost savings. Ultimately, all this leads to a socio-economic benefit where people are happy in terms of their health. The environment is happy in terms of environmental health, and there's also consistent development increase in terms of or acceleration in terms of the environment improvement that we say. So you see at the down the arrows what they say: directly providing sectors, how the ecosystem service is generating, how the cost is achieved, how the social benefit. This is just a working framework. And again, as I told you, it is all site specific. It all depends on how we look into these factors. So this is a fantastic example of green spaces or a blue-green combination spaces. This is the Bosco Verticale in Milan, Italy, where you see that the design itself is such a way that every balcony, every floor, every intermediate position, even the the common space, you see that vegetation is there. So this is one of the best examples which has been quoted. How it's called Milan's Green Towers. How this has become very popular. China has also got a lot of vertical gardening. They call it. They have vertical gardening, but that's in terms of kind of an agricultural horticulture practice. But this is exclusively for green buildings. And this kind of buildings are now becoming very popular. Some of the IT firms and many of the cities in India also have gone ahead. I don't have the names of them, but HCL is one, and they're going for many of these kind of green infrastructure happening. And this is example of the Serenity in Ang Mo Kio Park in Singapore. How this entire area was converted into a beautiful, wetland serpentine complex, and how you see the skyscrapers are there. But within the city itself, because Singapore is a very small area, how beautifully they manage the green and blue spaces. Water body that is there, there's a backwater in the back, island is there, and this green vegetation, there's a park in between. So the city itself can engage in activities right from morning running, spending time in the evening with a cup of tea. So all this happens, and then people are happy, nature is happy, and you see there's a lot of biodiversity because this green cover is there. Birds, insects, reptiles, all of them enhanced in the future. It is not just having taken inspired ideas for nature-based solutions, which man thinks, but there's also a lot of indigenous local people's idea and traditional knowledge that has come into play, and these have been classical examples how these kind of indigenous, the kind of indigenous and inspired kind of nature-based solutions are being followed. That is one example is community-based conservation, where you can see community itself getting down and helping out in conservation in a small area, and how the local people adapted to certain practices in terms of a decision taken among the people and that they followed very clearly. Now, this is a very good example from Monga Bay, where it talks about how the indigenous Gurung farmers in Nepal have revived the climate resilient millet cultivation. There was sudden fall in that. It's called as a foxtail millet, and that they have now slowly trying to revive. A best example I can give for India is that there is one particular rice variety going in the Kali and Aginashni estuaries in Karnataka. And there was a particular rice variety called Kagga. And this Kagga rice was disappearing. And this is disappearing in such a way that that the entire rice gene would get lost. But there is MS Swaminathan Foundation. They had an excellent intervention. Now they have revived the entire Kaga. It's a salt tolerant rice variety which goes in the estuarine upper stream. So little salt is required, and that has been revived. But again, this is a classical example how these Gurung farmers, the lady here is a Gurung farmer, how she is trying to. They have revived the climate resilient millet in Nepal. So that's how indigenous community help come. The cultivation is taking place. And this is an example from El Carico in Andean area. You see that how in Peru this single lady has gone in conservation. A small cat, it's not a big cat. You know that India's formed the Big Cat Alliance, and we are doing a lot of good work for snow leopards, tigers, lions, cheetahs, now panthers, and so on. But she had worked, through a small community. She has developed how these of traditional knowledge has come into play in terms of conservation. But there are also more than traditional, inputs to conservation and adaptation management. We are also man is also taken inputs from nature, which we call as nature-inspired engineering. And a lot of things happen in terms of nature-inspired engineering. You might be thinking why it is coming into inspired nature-based solution, because ultimately these things play a very important role because you borrow the concept from nature and you're trying to apply it. For example, biomimicry. I'll show an example living show with eco engineering. So this is an on the left side is an ant hill. You know how the ant hill is a long one, okay? But when scientists, this is National Geographic clip, scientists found that inside the ant hill, the temperature was down by several degrees. And now engineers are trying to mimic that and see if we bring narrow, thin, buildings. You can see like many kind of these thin buildings in Mumbai. When you drive in the Mumbai coast, even in the ECR and OMR, you can see. And down you can see a beetle. What is interesting in a beetle? You can see that, and down you can see a beetle. What is interesting in a beetle? You can see that, the black, the swellings about these are swellings are the nature, the morphology of the insect. But this particular insect is an insect that is able to identify water and store water in its body. So now scientists are trying to find out how this insect is able to keep this water in a desert. This is from a desert. This insect is a desert. It's kind of cricket family. The desert, the insect is a cricket insect, which makes, you see in the night coming. It's an insect, but it lives in desert, and this is able to store water in its body. It's able to identify water even in driest desert. So again, man is trying to take some cues from that. And living shorelines, you see, living shorelines are man-made. What we try to do is, what once we lost something, we try to put these living shorelines. And this is example from Noah, the American Noah, and you see that there's a lot of things that is there, how nature based. But I'll show you some example India. So this is Sundarbans. The Sundarban coast is having severe erosion issues. So they're building dikes. It was initially kind of clay dikes they built with the mangrove mud there, but then it became severely eroded after the different cyclones when they came, and that impacted them. But now, with the help of WWF and IUC, we see that these pots are being put, and these pots are amazing because they also plant mangroves there. It not just avoids erosion happening on the shore, and these are built of terracotta, which is again nature based, and some soil, big soil. And you see the mangroves are planted there, and mangroves are growing. And one in after certain years, you can see that this will be natural mangrove barriers created by man for a good purpose, following the ecosystem principles. This is in case of the US. You see that the oyster shells are dead that are being used as a wall. And the advantage of using oyster shell is that on this oyster shells only, the young oyster spats or the young ones start settling, start growing. This is a beautiful way of reviving, and this also avoids erosion. So this is one method that we call the living shorelines. And because these dead shells are put, live shells start growing on them, fishes start coming, and there's an enhanced biodiversity. Also, the coast is protected from any kind of erosion. And now you see, now coir mat is used as a shoreline measure. We talk about geotubes, but there is nature-based solution that coir mats are used in layers, and that can be kept for any kind of a solution that can happen. You can see rhizopora mangroves that are planted, and at the first level, rhizopora is there. Even erosion happens, these coir mats will settle down. And interestingly, we can plant on these coir mats mangrove seedlings and seagrass seedlings. That's also possible. And these are the living shoreline. Example on left side, you can see this is a wall that has been designed in such a way that uh, multiple organisms like crabs, like some birds, coastal mature birds, they can nest, they can come and live. Polychaetes can grow there. There can be anemones and so many things that is naturally created. Walls with multiple holes so that water can freely flow. It will not be obstructed from passing from one wetland to another. What we have done, we cut across wetland, we divided, we fragmented the wetlands, but systems like this can connect. And the water catchment, you can see structures which are there, naturally available. During summer, you see people are now going and feeding birds and animals with water in cups and pouring waters. These can be kept always present so that the birds can also come and enjoy. And on the last diagram that you see there, that's about the constructed wetlands, how different wetlands can be used for conservation of water. And when we talk about nature-based solutions or nature-informed solution, please remember that, as I informed earlier also, there's a lot of role to play in carbon sequestration, active carbon sinks, and net zero contribution. So this is net zero contribution, our vision, India's vision, 2070 is a net zero target. We have a pledge, a lot of policy, a lot of progress in terms of minimizing negative emissions and so on, and that's happening. And there's also a link between biodiversity and wrestling. When we build nature inspired solution, as I told, resilience is brought inside. Biodiversity is directly linked because if the biodiversity is good plants, good vegetation, automatically it takes care of not just the nature, but it withstands disturbances. Any changes, it is kind of protected. Change is mitigated, and the recovery is also fast when you see that when the natural healthy process are there, and that will help in sustaining of the entire ecosystem and entire nature, entire world. Having said that, it is not just the biodiversity, it is also socio-economic benefits that they provide. That's why we see that man and animal life or plant life or the living things have to go hand in hand, coexist, because we depend on that and they depend on us. Because when we destroy their habitats, they are in loss of their habitat, they come into attacking us. There is conflict. But when we protect the areas, give it to them, restore them, they are able to live happily. And because they live happily, there is not overgrazing and the carnivores are available in plenty because they keep the herbivores in check and our systems are protected. We get good food, good energy in terms of natural energy, and we are able to take it forward. That is the important social, in fact, social economic benefits. And also, we see that when we follow these inspired nature-based solutions, and adopt nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based approaches, we see that they are helping us in our policy and global firm. India is signatory to many of the global international UN frameworks like Paris Agreement, SDGs, and even, as I told you, UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration 2030. 2020 is called the restoration. We are trying to restore because we know that we cannot bring back the original, but we are trying to restore. And we take SDG, for example, if we take SDG 14, life below water, it is not single. It is affected because of 13 climate change and because of 15 life on land. What habit activities happen on land affect the water? What climate change affect? And you can see all the SDGs are beautifully interconnected to one. They're interwoven. And hats off to the team which worked on that. It tells us clearly why SDGs are very important and why it has to be made sure that these are taken forward for very important things. But we do have a lot of problems in terms of finance because these are expensive things. Nature-based solutions are very expensive, but very good to know that climate finance is one. Tamil Nadu Green Climate Company is one example. There are many states and UTs also which are working on the same grounds to see how climate finance can happen. There are green investments. Private companies are coming forward through the CSR activity, through PPP models. You can see that lot of activities happening. So finance once upon a time was a big worry, but now financing is available and that can be tapped correctly and used correctly for the mitigation of the nature base, for mitigation of climate change impacts. But we also have challenges and there are limitations. For example, land is conflict. Whose land it is? Where will I plant the vegetations? And how will I go hand in hand with development? There is mining happening. There is building coming up. There is infrastructure development in terms of SIPCOTs and SIPCOs and so many other things. How are they going to farm and water? How are they going to balance? That's a big question. As already funding gaps is now slowly being mitigated, and you can see that funds are now available both at the state level, the central level, and also through the big private players like MNCs which can fund. And we also have problem monitoring issues. How projects start very well, good ideas, good concept, good applications. But what is the output? Can it be replicated? Can it be an example? What are the lessons learned? This is something that I'm missing in terms of our monitoring issues. So if you have to measure it effectively, you must have indicators, and if every module have indicators, have strong monitoring frameworks so that the success matrix is always above score of 7, helping out. And what are the future opportunities in terms of inspired or nature-based solutions? A lot of innovation is coming in terms of AI and ecological planning. We are doing now ecological carrying capacity, doing a lot of tourism carrying capacities where we also able to mathematically, statistically extrapolate, interpolate, and do a lot of things. And this can be integrated into climate action. So just before I wind up with the presentation, I just want to show some of the work done by NCCM, which has directly or indirectly helped in nature-based solutions. So out of the three important ICDM activities, see, one is the delineation of eco-sensitive area where close to 34,000 square kilometer of ecosystems have been mapped. That's a very important work that we did. And these are the ecosystems and eco-sensitive area under CRZ notification. It's A to K, but now it is possible in the future that the eco-sensitive zones of protected areas might be also added, which might increase in the total area of the available area of protection in India, because we have a target of 2030, the Aichi targets where we have to conserve 30%, protect 30% of area on land and water for nature, for any kind of conservation activities. So out of the 11, you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, corals, mangroves, seagrass, all these ecosystems. There are habitats like bird nesting, turtle nesting, horseshoe crabs. There are geomorph features like sand dunes and mudflats, and there are heritage and culturally important archaeological sites. And also, there is also protected area. All the protected areas also added in. So these are the MPs. So this is an example of East Coast and West Coast, how the ESA maps or CRZ1A map looks. We have mapped for the entire country, and these are the maps, how they look. But when you look at the coastal zone management plan, you can see only green line. You can see my cursor moving if possible. This is the place. You can see all this as ESA or CRZ1A. So this is the CRZ1A. What is inside the green is what we have done in detail. So that is one of the greatest exercises that we did. And this is an example of how mapping can help in taking decisions. Now, this, as I told, this is the Sagar Island, and the area is talking about is course, we see that Mandalmuni and close, we can see that salt marsh is there. And also, we engage local community, something called as Participatory Coastal Rural Appraisal, PCRA, where the locals do the maps. They use Rangoli, they use checks, color pencil, they mark the area and tell what is there, where mangroves are, where coral reefs are, where salt marsh are. And when you map them, it's coming perfectly together. Some outputs from hotspot that we have prepared for physical vulnerability in Andhra Coast, how we have done the ecological vulnerability in terms of running invest models with the presence of the ecosystem, with the absence of ecosystem, what impact is there. For example, if you see the orange color line, these are exposed areas, which means that these areas are vulnerable to any kind of natural asset. Whereas we have a mangrove or a salt marsh or a sand dune or a mud flat, then it will minimize the impact. That is what we have done. And this is just an example of marine spatial plan that NCSM did for Giga and Sagar and West Bengal coast. And this is the blue economy protection that we have did. And this is the total ICLM, integrated coastal management plan that we have did. This is the example that I want to show. And this is the atlas that we prepared for the coast of West Bengal. And we also prepared the marine spatial planning for Giga and Shankar coast. So with that, I conclude my talk. I'm open for questions. And whatever questions I know the answer, I will answer you. If not, I can get back to you. And thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, sir, for a very elaborate and detailed, inspiring lecture. So, participants, I request you to engage with sir and clarify your doubts, or if you have some suggestions for Puducherry or some wherever else you are from, please try to interact and participants, you are requested to.
You can also mail me at deepak@ncacm.res.in. It's very simple. You can go to the website. Our names are there. So if you, in case you have a detailed doubt which you want to go back home and think over and ask me, you can get back to me. I'm a purely marine biologist, so I can give you a conservation angle. But if you have any other inputs required in terms of engineering, in terms of planning, we have a solid team at NCSM. We cover all aspects, including socioeconomics. So I can get back to them, or I can connect you to them where we can have more inputs. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll take a minute to see if someone has any doubts or some suggestions to share here. And by then, sir, I will ask something with you.
Yes, please.
So, if there is a situation where we have to go for a solution, if there is a problem, where do we draw a line, like a choice where where we go for a gray solution or a nature-based solution? And more specifically, sir, one thing that I have learned with nature-based solution is that it takes time to show results. Okay, so in that case, as you know, learned people or whatever, as scientists, there are also some students here. So how do we convince policymakers or the funders or even administrators to go for nature-based solutions when there is a dire necessity that we have to go for immediate solutions? So can you
Absolutely
brief?
right. See, nature-based solution is what we desire. We want to have that. And as I told you in my talk, Supreme Court has very clearly told that no hard structures or gray structure. I mean, gray structures to an extent, yeah, wherever. And as nicely put by you, nature-based solution takes a lot of time. It is not tomorrow's result. And visibly, you cannot see anything also. It happened under, I know, inside. Now, for example, Pondicherry Coast, the classic example, the beach that was eroding very much, erosion was severe.
The
And you know,
groins
these
built, yeah.
groins were there, and even there are ports on northern southern side which can also cause even small Any intervention you have on the coast has got an impact because our coastal system is like because currents are fast and we're also starved of sand coming from the rivers from upstream mainly because there are check dams and so sediment supply also reduced. So automatically sediment will be gone. But once the solution came, when NIOT designed and NCCR was there, when they put a submerged, it's kind of reef, it's not actual reef, but it's a kind of structure put inside, invisible, we were able to kind of bring back the what do you call that, the entire shoreline back to its original form some years back. We are able to do that. Okay, that is an immediate solution. But as pointed out, nature-based solution will take a lot of time and it is completely site-specific. I agree with you, not every place nature-based solution works. Some places only hard structures have to go because of situation. Another example, East Coast is the case of. I'm just not able to immediately get the name. Our team is working with the Andhra government and Odisha government, where already hard structures are put, but erosion is very severe now. It just withstood for a year or two, then automatically started. In terms of, I think Goa, there is a place geotube was suggested as a hard engineering structure, submerged, but now that is being exposed. So it is not 100% successful in terms of nature based or successful in terms of hard structures. It is just a experiment. We have to try and see. But it is worth the wait because the kind of ecosystem service they provide, as I told you, it is not the protection. In the long run, the kind of ecosystem service they provide, the provision services, the regulatory services, the cultural service they provide is immense. So as I told you at the beginning also, it is completely site specific. You have to look into the problem. It is not jumping to a decision immediately. The decision has to be taken along with multiple stakeholders. It is not just the policymakers, not just the administrators. It is the community per se because they are there in the area. They are in the field. It is their land. Their ancestors used that land, and now there's a problem. So what can be done has to be a kind of stakeholder consultation that has happened, and then step by step it's a process. But in some cases, as you clearly point out, hard structures are immediate. We don't have an option. But having hard structures, we can also think about long-term future, shifting, completely changing them into a soft structure. I mean, I know the answer is very big, but in nutshell, if you want to say that, yes, there are certain areas where the immediate response required, immediate mitigation required. There are places where we can wait, and there's a nice classification of for the course. When they say do nothing, no, leave it, retreat like that. No, like that. We have to watch and then take a call.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
You presented a lot of case studies and examples of nature-based solutions being carried out elsewhere from a lot of countries.
Yes,
Thank you so much, sir.
my pleasure.
Uh, so yeah, so now we'll move on to the session where we deliver our very sincere gratitude to the speaker. So please, vote of thanks, please. I request Ms. Sandrashmi to deliver the vote of thanks and conclude the session.
Good evening to everyone. On behalf of the Puducherry Climate Change Cell, Department of Science, Technology and Environment, I extend my sincere gratitude to everyone who joined today's webinar session. I express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Deepak Samuel V, Scientist E, NCSM, Chennai, for delivering an insightful and enriching presentation on nature-inspired solution for climate resilience. We sincerely appreciate his valuable perspectives on the role of nature based approaches in addressing climate change challenges and strengthening environmental resilience. His presentation highlighted the importance of ecosystem restoration, sustainable resource management, biodiversity conservation, and community driven climate solution in building a resilient and sustainable future. Thank you, sir. I thank Thiru K. Kalamegam, Environmental Engineer, Department of Science, Technology and Environment, for delivering the opening remarks that highlighted the importance of integrating wetland conservation into climate and development policies. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to our respected Secretary cum Director and Coordinator for their continued guidance, support, and efforts in successfully organizing this webinar in observance of World Environment Day 2026. Finally, I thank all the participants for your active involvement and keen interest throughout the session. Your participation reflects our shared commitment towards environmental sustainability and climate action. Let us take forward the key message from today's discussion by embracing nature inspired solution and working collectively towards a greener, healthier, and climate resilient future. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll just leave the meeting now.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.